Oh, crap. I'm a minute late. A whole minute late. What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing? You know, I had a whole plan. I was going to wear a mask because it's Halloween tomorrow, and I got distracted, and I forgot. But it's okay, because my face naturally is scary enough, I think. So I think we'll be good. Me and Dougie are here, just chilling. As always, he's like my podcast live demonstration co-host. He doesn't say very much though. How's everybody doing? You guys doing all right? Y'all geared up for Halloween? I've got to do some pumpkins tonight. We did them kind of last minute. Normally, Nicole has us carving pumpkins like weeks ahead of time so that they're nasty and gross by the time Halloween comes around. But this time, just everything's been busy and hectic at home, and we haven't had a chance. So I promised Ava that we would carve some pumpkins. So I went out, and thankfully, they're really cheap tonight. If you go get a pumpkin right now, it's a great time to go buy a pumpkin. So yeah, we'll be doing that after we're done here. That's right. Face for radio and a voice for print. You guys know what's up. So I guess we'll give it a couple more minutes and kill some time waiting for folks to find it. I sent out an email pretty late. Sorry about that. But these scheduled things are usually on the calendar. So if you are a guild subscriber or a guild member, you can go into the calendar. You could add that to your calendar if you want to, so you don't miss any of this stuff. But we also send the emails out, and we like to be a little bit more timely than I was today. So. All right, so we got something special tonight, you guys. We're going to talk about Philip Morley, and I like to call Philip my good buddy. I don't even know if he knows that he's my good buddy, but I say he is. And he is I think one of the most inspirational modern builders that's around right now, and we're very lucky that he teaches and he tells other people how he does what he does. And he was in town for something. I think the St. Louis Woodworkers Association had an event. It was right as my classes were closing, and this was like back in March, I think. So we tried to look, you're here. I'm finishing up my class. Let's do something together. So we came up with the idea to do this Mastering Bent Lamination course, which is why you see Philip in my shop and not in his own shop. Does Philip even have a shop right now? I think he's just working at the school. So while he was here, we decided that we would film this thing, and it turned out great. And it's focusing on 3 different types of bent lamination that you might want to incorporate into your work. Hey, let me take a step back. If you're not sure why we're even here tonight, this is what we call a preview party in the Wood Whisperer Guild. That's a place where we launch our big courses for woodworking. We know that these courses are pricey and they're a commitment, and we want to make sure that you fully understand what you're getting into and what the level of, detail and quality is with these courses, and also who the instructor is. So we like to do a preview party the night before the course releases. This way you could still get the pre-order discount, and you get a chance to see one of the lessons. It's a full lesson, nothing edited, and sometimes it's in the middle of the story. So it may not make complete sequential sense, but you get a feel for what's going on. And this way you can make a buying decision. You know what you're getting into. And I will tell you guys, tonight, we're doing something that we have never done before. We have a special bonus. So instead of just getting Philip Morley's Bent Lamination course, we're going to throw in another course on top of it. It's a 2-for-1. I will tell you, if you've already pre-ordered this course, you're going to get that too. The idea came to us late, and no one's going to miss out on this. So if you've already pre-ordered, you're going to get that bonus as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But let's get back to Philip's thing. So he's basically got 3 types of bent lamination. There's like an S, but it's all consistent thickness, but it's 2 curves. He does one of those. He does a tapered lamination where it's thicker on one end, thinner on the other, and then curved. And then he does a double tapered lamination where it's thinner on both ends and a little chunkier in the middle. Shows you how to do all the slicing and dicing and planing and the jigs that he came up with to do the planing safely and repeatably and be able to make like little adjustments to them is really ingenious, and I think you guys are going to like that. Tonight's preview that we're going to watch is a 13-minute lesson, and it's basically going to cover the first version here. It's the more simple lamination of the three. And he, in this one, is using clamps and a bending form. In some of the other ones, we show how to use a vacuum press as a solution, which is always a great option. It's a preferred option for most people who do this, but we do like to show that it can be done with clamps as well. So we'll get to that in a second. But more about this bonus. What's the bonus? Well, I think it's pretty cool to see this technique come to life, but I also think it is enhanced if you can see an actual use case of that technique. So what I'm going to do is anybody who pre-orders the bent lamination course, I'm going to throw in for free my bent lamination quilt rack course. So I basically made kind of like a wishbone design. It starts straight and then has a real wide bow out. And then we have bars going between those pieces, inspired by a David Marc's piece, for hanging quilts. I mean, you can use it for other things too. I don't know. Maybe you hang kids from it, pets, whatever you're into. I'm not here to judge, but it's a pretty nice little thing. But I think the cool thing is seeing the actual application. Now, of course, I'll probably cover some things similar to what Philip covers in his course, but you'll get the perspective from me as well as see it in an actual build application. And that's the bonus. All right, so here's the deal. Tomorrow, the price goes up. The videos release in full tomorrow. Something I am told I need to reiterate is that this stuff is on demand. You don't have to watch these videos at any particular time. They're there for you. You could download them. You could put them on your hard drive. You could log back into the site 5 years from now, assuming the site is still there. You'll be able to log in and access those videos. We don't take them away from you. It's a completely on-demand course. This is not something that is, time-gated in some way. So I like to reiterate that as much as possible. There will be time for questions afterwards. I don't want to dwell too long on questions. I'll pick some of the questions that I see coming in. We can answer those after we watch the video and try to catch up. So if there's any questions at all about what we're presenting here, this course, the bonus, or anything in general, I'm here for you guys. Happy to answer questions, and I'll even answer some questions in the chat while we're watching. Alrighty, so real quick, you know what, before we do watch that, if you're curious, maybe you don't remember the quilt rack, I said a lot about it, but here's a little preview. And there we go. Boom, baby. Now, if you think you might want to build something like this, I do have a full plan available and multiple videos in this series in the Wood Whisperer Guild. Okay, we don't need to see that end part, but you get the idea. That's what we're doing. And that's just the bonus, and it's a full course. So that's a huge value we're dropping on top of this. So let's get to Philip's lesson here. Again, it's about a 13-minute commitment if you got stuff to do and pumpkins to carve like I do. But we'll watch it together. Here we go. Oh, by the way, this is in the middle. I think this is lesson 3, if I'm not mistaken. So you would have had 2 lessons under your belt at this point. So kind of in the middle of a sentence, if you will. Here we go.
With our laminations planed nice and consistent, it's time to start thinking about gluing this to our form. So there's a few more steps that we need to do. So as you can see with the form, I went ahead and bandsawed the underside of this. It just makes it a little bit easier when we start clamping. Our clamps will kind of follow the shape of the piece we're doing instead of having that straight edge here where it's a little bit harder to line up. Just remember which one is the side that you're going to clamp to. Also, I wanted to mention, so this is our stack that we're actually going to use. It's going to be our component, and then this is the stack that's going to help clamp it down. It looks a little overkill. Maybe we could get rid of a few of these, but you really do want to have enough thickness here so when you clamp it down, it distributes that pressure. In the past, I've tried to get away with too little, and it ended up not working out. Again, this could just be masonite, 1/8" masonite. 1/8" MDF would work too. I did make extra. I've already cut it off because a few of them blew up on us, and it was right around some little nut that was happening. So just got to be aware of that. I knew that I was plenty over length. It was okay. So it's always a good idea to make it maybe 6 inches, 8 inches over, because a lot of times with a planer, at the beginning, at the tail end, you can get a little bit of snipe, a little bit of tear out. So keep that in mind. Before we start spreading glue, we need to start thinking about a glue release. So packing tape on the form is going to help us out. This is how this is going to go. So that's, if I can push it down easily like that, that's going to be work out really well for us. And so we'll put packing tape here. I've got a couple of these little cleats that will screw on to the form, to the face of it. This will help us to pound these veneers to pull it to that edge so that they don't slip too much and end up not being parallel to the form. We've got a couple of blocks for the end, so I'll pack and tape these. A couple of blocks for the end, so we kind of raise this off the table and just help us be able to get our clamps in underneath it, and this thing's not wanting to fall around on us. So let's start with the packing tape. If it's not obvious, this is just to stop our actual part getting stuck to our form. A lot of times you're going to reuse this. You can use wax for this. I don't tend to like doing that because then you get wax on your parts. So packing tape works well. Makes a lovely noise. Now when you make your form, you've got to calculate this 3/1000 of an inch. All right, and these guys. So we're going to take the form, and the packing tape is going to go down. These are probably a little bit overkill in length, but I'm going to just screw this down, towards the ends, and then something like that. You don't have to be too precise about it. It's just going to help us to clamp the laminations to this if we need to keep things nice and straight. Now that we have these guys screwed down, I'm actually going to go right back to the bandsaw and just whack these off because they're going to annoy me and get in the way. I'm going to then put some feet on, so this is kind of stable as I go, but this is just going to get on my nerves. So probably should just cut them shorter. I can just go to the bandsaw real quick and whack them off. So I'm just looking to get enough room underneath, hopefully, for a clamp. All right, so now we have a form that we should be able to get our clamps around. There's enough room there, and it's not wanting to drop over on us. We're getting close to getting ready to glue this up. So we have our clamping coil. We still need to put packing tape on, make sure that doesn't stick down to our actual component here. And we want to make sure we've got this back in the sequential, how it came out of that piece, right? So we're keeping it sequential, is that the right word? So we have our little triangle at the end, and we're just going to match that, and we should be good. So this is how I typically like to do my glue up. So I've taken the stack and I've taken the top layer off so it has up, and I'm going to put that to the side. I'm going to spread the glue, and then I'm going to make sure from left to right, I'm going to stack it back, and then this one's going to go right on top. Taping the ends just makes it easier for me to get this glue on there. I'm a roller guy. I like using this. Some people just pour that glue on there and use like a spreader. I like having a little bit more control over the glue. Talking about glue, and we alluded to this earlier on in the video about spring back. It's one of those things, the more I've been doing this, the more I'm not wanting to use toxic glues. And some of the glues are a little more toxic than others. But this cold press glue works really well for this. I've done yellow glue with it, but typically those more water-based glues, as they dry, you can start having spring back. If you've got a very tight radius, it usually will creep. It will go inwards. So you've got to be a little bit aware of that. Other glues that work well is Unibond 1, which I feel like it's probably about the same as this. I'm not 100% sure. And then Unibond 800 works really well. It's just a little bit more messy and toxic to use. So if you do use that, you got to wear a mask, you got to wear gloves, and you got to be outside or in a ventilated area. It's really not good for you. And then a thickened epoxy. Sometimes the considerations are it's going to take a long time to get this done. If you imagine it was 10 times this, so that's kind of a big exaggeration, but let's say we had 4 lots of this to do that had to all go at the same time, you're going to want to use a glue with a long open time. So those are the things you got to keep in mind. The harder the glue line, as it dries, the less spring back you're going to get. So we're going to go with this cold press glue. The other thing I like about these type glues, you know, there's kind of no fuss, right? You don't have to do any mixing or anything. It's easy cleanup. I've used Gorilla Glue, like polyurethane glue for this. That can work really well too, but your rollers, you're going through a bunch of them. You're going to throw them out, and it's just messy. So more and more I've been doing it, I'm trying to keep it the simplest glue. If it works, it works. So it always takes a minute for the roller to get loaded. And this may be obvious, but I've taught enough and I see people not do this, but this whole reason to paint things like this is you're meant to bring the glue up into it and roll it several times to get the whole roller saturated. I've seen people just dip it in there and then go. It doesn't spread as well. All right, so now we're looking pretty good. So this is plenty of glue. I won't do any more than that. All right, so I'm going left to right. Don't have to do both faces. It'd just be a nightmare to do that. And this is our top. A little tape in the middle, just see if that'll help. All right. Got a clamping coil material. Gonna push this right up against her and start clamping. I'm gonna bring it down here in the middle. I'm gonna try to squeeze as much out of that as I can because the thread's gonna be our problem, right? So that was pretty easy. Sometimes those like squeezy, the extreme version, the heavy duty ones work really well for this, and then I'll come back with these guys. So let's see. So again, I'm going to try to squeeze as much down as I can. And as I'm going, just make sure I'm pulled up tight. I tend to like to alternate one side to the other side. I don't know if it makes that much difference on a narrow part like this. So one random little thing, using these type gloves, not just, it's a good idea to protect yourself from the glue, but it also gives you a lot more grip on these clamps. My hands are super dry. I was teaching a class with Jeff Miller, and he always put these on before clamping. I was like, what are you worried about? And it was for this reason, but I can get so much more on it now. And when you're using someone else's clamps, they don't really like you spitting on your hands. All right, so I'm going to take these off now and pull it up nice and tight. Look how we're looking. It's looking really nice. Take this guy off. Go between these two. Step up to the big boy. Just need one more just at the end here. Yeah, it's probably going to slide down the hill. So you can really see, if we only had a couple of layers on top, where each one of these clamps go, it's just going to make a dip there. It's not going to distribute that pressure out. So it is really important to have that thick coal on top. All right. Oh. Might give up on that one. Move this one up. So I'm just looking if there's any voids. It looks super clean, really tight. Just seeing a little squeeze out on every layer, not too much, it's not too messy. And you can see if you were trying to do this as a two-part form, there's no forgiveness in the thickness of the component. And so, you know, a lot of times you design that form that you can have a 3/4 inch thick component, it's got to be bang on, or else the form will have these little hollows and stuff. So this sometimes is the better way to go. There we go. Nice. That smaller clamp up on the hill there just worked better for some reason. I'm typically not going to rush taking this out, even though within an hour that glue is probably dry. I'm going to leave it overnight, and then the next day I'll go ahead and we can start taking it down to final thickness or width.
All right. What do you guys think about that? Phil's the best. So if you're fairly new to the guild, maybe you haven't seen a guild course before, I think you can probably immediately tell the difference between what we do in the guild and what you typically will find on YouTube. We take our time, you know, we don't waste our time, but we take our time. There's concepts, and just seeing how Philip evaluates what he's doing. You know, you see this in a YouTube video, it's going to be burp, 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 you're going to clamp it down and then they move on. But having someone walk through that process, show you how much time he's taking to look at the laminations, to look for gaps, to evaluate the fit and make sure everything's perfect. And talking through that, it's like taking a course in person, you know, just a whole lot cheaper. So if you're, like I said, if you're not familiar with what we do in the guild, that is what the guild is all about. That's why it exists, is to be, you know, an alternative to what else is out there, as well as a cheaper alternative to traveling and taking a class that'll cost you $1,500, you know, $2,000 to take a class where you could review these videos indefinitely over and over. And in the case of, you know, a newly released course, the instructors are typically there to answer questions for you too, which is kind of cool. So I did have some questions come in. If you guys want me to run through those real quick, I am more than happy to. Yeah, Dougie heard that we've got relatives over, so he heard some noise out there, and then he settled back down. But you guys missed it. He was snoring his head off the entire time during that video. Thankfully, he stopped. Tommaso, you mentioned something about the finger boo-boos. So, you know what's funny? We just recorded Wood Talk, and the next episode is called matching, or I forget, like dual finger boo-boos or something like that, because I brought attention to it. So Matt's right index finger and my left index finger both have little boo-boos on them. All right. Well, let's start with the last question first. We've got, let's see, 20. I won't be able to get all these up into the broadcast, but 20 Man Cave '08. Is the bent lam better than making it out of solid wood? Well, there are bending methods using steam, right? So you could certainly do steam bending. That's an old way, ancient way of doing it. But I think that has its place. There are certain times where that makes the most sense. And if you know the process and you're good at it and you know all the nuance of it, sure, it's perfectly fine. But if you're looking for something a little bit more predictable, a little more systematic, and something you could really do with any species of wood, kiln dried or otherwise, you can bend any lumber into submission with this bent lamination process in a much more predictable manner. You just have to be okay with the fact that you are essentially creating laminations, and you might see those laminations in a finished product. But the benefit is that it's incredibly stable. It's locked into that shape. It's not likely to change shape anytime soon. If you have glue spread, you won't have like delamination as long as you have a good quality glue and you did everything correctly. I do think it requires more in the way of gear, right? To get it done, you've got a bandsaw, you've got to get the planer operation going. But it is, I think for me personally, it's my preferred method if I'm going to bend, right? So if you want to make bent parts, really you're looking at steam bending, bent lamination, or trying to come up with some way to make solid wood with various cuts to be whatever the shape you want it to be. The reason we don't typically do that, like let's say you're doing a rocker runner, for a rocking chair. You have the runners that have a really nice curve to them. If you tried to cut that out of solid wood, let's say hypothetically you had a piece that was big enough to allow you to cut that curve, what you're going to end up with is run out, where the grain doesn't change direction, even though the orientation of the wood and the piece has changed direction. So you end up with weak points where your end grain kind of pushes out and it's grain run out, right? And that's something we really want to avoid for stability. So bent lamination and steam bending are really the way to get to that point. So solid wood definitely has its place, but you got to be careful with it. All right, so GZ2251 says, I've always wondered how the glue dries in a vacuum without air. Okay, so the glue is not drying necessarily because of air. It's usually drying and curing based on two things. Well, one thing, the loss of moisture, and that's either through evaporation or absorption into the wood. Both of those things are still happening when it's under the vacuum. And actually, you might argue that it's going to happen faster in a vacuum because you are constantly pulling any air. Those bags aren't perfect. They leak. So you do wind up getting some air in there, and that vacuum is constantly pulling the moisture out of it, right? So you actually can get a fairly rapid cure. And then once you open that bag, you find that it's, pretty locked down. But it's more about moisture so much than it is about just having exposure to air, if that makes sense. Next question was from Tommaso. He said, I wonder if Marc or Philip will sell the jigs. No, these are easy enough to make. There's nothing to sell. We would be selling you a couple pieces of wood. So the jigs that Philip uses for this, think 2 pieces of good quality 8-quarter stock, something very durable. I think we used, did we use poplar? Might have been poplar, but it was 8-quarter. And then we make some shims. And then depending on what the shape is that you're putting into the lamination, you might put a shim in the middle and screw it down on the ends. He uses playing cards as shims as well to make fine adjustments. And he gets his calipers out, and he's very specific about what he's trying to reach. But it's a matter of screwing and unscrewing a jig back and forth, putting shims in place. This is all stuff you're going to do in your own shop. There is no need to sell a jig for this. You could do it yourself. How to deal. Okay, this is Shade 45313. How do you deal with glue squeeze out in the bag? Well, you want to minimize it as much as possible, but typically almost everything you put in the bag will be glue resistant. So you end up with like a melamine platen on the bottom. That surface is typically not going to hold on to glue. You typically will cover your bending form in tape. Usually we use packing tape, but there are other ways that you could do. You could just wax it if you really wanted to. But things are generally going to be protected from the glue, so the glue will just pop right off. If you don't, beware. It could be a problem. If you use that air netting, if you put the air netting on top of it, that stuff can actually get the glue caught in it. It's just a netting material. Even though the glue doesn't want to necessarily bond to plastic, the fine, mesh material will kind of hold on to the glue. So, that's not ideal. But typically, you would have a little bit of time. Once you take everything out, you might be able to just kind of use your finger to scrape that stuff off. But usually, it's not that bad, and everything in there is kind of set up to prevent glue from sticking. Top Gun says, Mark, does your class include plans for a form for the bent lamination? So he's talking about the bonus class, okay, the bent lamination quilt rack. Does it contain plans for the form for the bent lamination? In a preview, I seen you use the vacuum bag. So yes, my plans do contain that bending form shape in a PDF, and you could either do a print at home PDF and glue the pieces of paper together, or you can take the full size print to a print shop and have them printed out on a large piece of paper, and you just take that back to your shop and start making your cuts. So again, you'll be making the bending form yourself, but we will give you the pattern that you just download. It's there for you. Let's see, Bruce Branson Meyer says, what's the brand name of the countersink? That is an Amana countersink. It's the one that is my go-to, and I put a link in the chat room if you want to check that out. But anytime you see me use that, chances are you'll find that link in the description of the video that you're watching. It's a good one. I like the Amana. Our buddy Greg Batt says, not sure if I missed it, but any reason to pick one sheet good versus another for the bending forms? I think they will all work just fine, but I think it really comes down to price, because you're going to be, typically with most bending forms, you're going to use a lot. Even for that little bend that he did, it was probably about maybe 3 inches in total thickness, but you're still using a good chunk of width, because whatever you're doing with the shape, you don't want it to be fragile. You don't want it to bend under pressure. So you have to put a decent amount of width there, and then you have to stack it up in layers, and you're using a lot of material in a hurry. MDF is typically used just because it's cheap. It's a good way to, it's like dense. It's a good way to build up a platform. But if you had a whole bunch of plywood, nice flat plywood that was sitting around, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to use plywood to do that. I think cost and stability are the main things. And as long as it's a sheet good, it's stable. And as long as it's inexpensive, it's probably a decent choice. How thick is the form? We just kind of covered that, Dennis. I'm guessing, I'd have to look at the plan. I don't remember exactly. I think he did like 4 layers. So we're looking at something close to 3 inches or so. Now, what's interesting, I don't know if you guys remember from the preview on my bent lamination quilt rack, I actually did 1 lamination and it was extra wide. So I only did 1 bend, and then I took that to the bandsaw and I cut it down the middle. So I had 2 identical legs for both sides, which is a cool technique if you've got multiples to make. Don't think in terms of just doing 1. Like Philip's was pretty narrow, but if he'd had to do multiples, he may have been better off making a wider form and doing his bend in one shot with wider pieces. It can save you a whole lot of time, but you're investing a little bit more in a wider bending form. So kind of a little bit of a give and take there. Let me see. Okay, we already answered that question about solid wood. So that is all I had pre-selected. I can go back to the chat room. Let me just reiterate real quick. If you guys are interested in this course, you can get it right now at the pre-order price. It's discounted automatically. If you go to twwguild.com, you're going to find under courses, you'll see Phil's smiling face. It's already discounted. If you are a Guild Stream subscriber, you get an extra 10% discount on top of that. So think about that too. If you're not a subscriber already, you could sign up for Guild Stream and get that automatic extra 10% discount. Just make sure you subscribe to Guild Stream first and then go back and buy that course. The other thing is tonight, special that we're going to be doing right now is this other bent lamination quilt rack course of mine. So it's a 2-for-1. So when you pre-order Philip's course, you're going to get mine for free, which is a pretty incredible value. And I just like the idea of you guys being able to see a technique, but then actually see a similar, part of that technique being used in an actual application. Because I think it's where a lot of people start to ask questions. Even with Philip's course, they're like, well, what about joinery? What about cutting to length? What about, there's all these things that have to happen. Just because you bend the wood into a shape doesn't mean you necessarily know what to do next, right? So that's where my project will kind of come in and fill a little bit of that in for you and give you some ideas that I think will be really useful for projects in the future. Here we go. Looking at some other... Sorry, I hate the silence, but I have to read to get questions. Let's see. Michael Plant says, does a mold release spray, as you would use for epoxy, do okay for the glue squeeze out? I mean, if you need to, man, I don't know why you necessarily would need to. You cover your form. I guess you could do it on there. I haven't used a lot of mold release spray. Does it dry? It's not a wet solution, right? It is something that dries. If it dries and you have it, I can't see why you wouldn't want to use it. But I love just using packing tape. It's super easy, and if it gets nasty, you can just peel it off and throw some more down. And I know nothing is going to stick to it. So I typically use packing tape for that. But you probably know more about mold release spray than I do, because I don't really do much with that. But if it works for epoxy, certainly would work there. I just don't know if you necessarily need it. Were there any tools Philip lamented not having at your shop? As in, he lamented that I didn't have the tool and he wished I had it, or he saw a tool that he wished he had? There's a big difference. But actually only one of those happened. Philip was very jealous of my planer. When he was planing these very, very thin strips, he was like, yeah, I'm not sure if we can get away with that. He's like, let's just do a couple of tests. And he dropped a few swear words like you do when you see something that is just so beautiful and so nicely crafted that you're jealous and wish you had one. I've been there and done that. So he really enjoyed the Felder planer. It did a great job on those thin veneers that you're going to see him. We cut them at the bandsaw and then send them through the planer. And if your planer is not up to the task, you know, the results may not be great. But he was very happy with the Felder. But everything else, I don't know, Sean, I don't know if you meant the other way. Everything else, I pretty much had everything he needed for this task. I mean, what's bent lamination? Bandsaw, planer, then maybe flush trim bit so that you could do your cutting of the bending form, and then maybe some hand tools. We do a little bit of hand tool shaping of that shape. So what you didn't see yet was him taking a very thin piece of plywood to establish his curve. And once he gets that faired and perfect, then he uses that curve to start building the form. So there's a little bit of handwork that goes into finessing that as well. So you can use construction grade plywood. Dude, you can use any plywood as long as it's, you know, fairly stable. And I say it's stable, I'm assuming you're going to build more with this in the future. Truthfully, if all you had were, like, let's say you just had a pile of old gross pine boards that have been sitting in your garage for 10 years, and you wanted to cut that up and make a bending form out of that, that's going to be just fine. Now, will it be the same shape in 5 years? I don't know. So I wouldn't say this is something you want to do like long term, but a lot of us just build one-offs. So I keep saying sheet goods and we keep thinking MDF, but we're thinking long-term stability. If you just have some scrap material and you can make the shape you want, I don't care if it's solid wood, the bending form, you know, it's going to establish the shape. It's just if the shape changes, then you got problems, right? So people don't usually build forms out of solid, but you could. So all that to say that any sheet good that you have access to that's inexpensive is a perfect candidate for something like this. Tommaso wonders if those F-style clamps are better than the jet clamps with more squared faces. I don't know. I mean, maybe. It depends on how much pressure you want to apply. Now, you saw how he was really cranking down. You can get a lot more force applied with those Bessie F-styles. Maybe a lot is wrong. Someone look this up, or maybe someone knows this off the top of their head. To my knowledge, those larger F-style clamps, you can get a lot more focused pressure than you can get with a parallel clamp. The caul that he's using, which is a stack of laminations, that's spreading the pressure. So the size of the clamp head isn't so much a factor. I think if you're trying to get away with smaller cauls, or a caul that doesn't distribute the pressure as well, then you might want to use something with a bigger clamp head. But in the case of the way Philip does it, I don't think that parallel clamps would really offer much advantage, and might be a disadvantage if it's not able to apply as much pressure as he was able to. He had a couple of spots you could see when he was first clamping it down. You could see there were a couple of trouble areas that he had to go back in and really get in there. And then he puts the gloves, you know, the alternative to spitting, I guess. That's a thing for Philip. But he put the gloves on to really crank down. So if he's really cranking down on an F-style clamp, I'm pretty sure my jet clamps would not have been real happy with that level of pressure. That is not. It's not a marijuana plant. It is a dragon tree, sir. Good one though. Okay, so Dr. Ben Bodner Esquire knows that I'm careful with my sugar intake. And what's my favorite Halloween candy? I mean, one of my favorite candies, just across the board, Twix, which isn't always going to end up in your Halloween bag. I'm a big Twix fan. And you know what I've come to really, really enjoy is a Take 5. And again, I don't think I'm going to see many of those in the kids' candy collection. I guess if we're just going classic Halloween, I'll take a Reese's Cup. Definitely take a Reese's Cup. Great question, Ben. I'm still hung up on a marijuana plant. That's great. Let's see. Greg, you filmed this, right? I thought I heard some laughing behind it. Yes, this was all me. This was not filmed by our videographer, Todd. He does a better job than I do. But now that we have Todd, I only film myself. So it actually was a little bit of a change of pace to be just, dude behind the camera again. And took some adjustment. But yeah, put me and Phil in the same room for too long and things are going to get funny. I should ask Todd how much stuff he has that just had to be cut just for reasons. Because Philip and I have a pretty similar sense of humor when it comes to things like that. Maximilian Zorn says he uses paste wax on all work surfaces, prevents any glue from sticking to them. I do as well. Let's see what else we got. Given the lack of space. Here we go. Sink, whatever that is. Given the lack of space, could you use a track saw in lieu of a table saw in most situations? Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as we're talking about breaking down of panels and breaking down of material. If you're talking about the table saw in the whole array of things it can do for joinery, no, you're not doing that with the track saw. But if we're just talking about sheet good breakdown, sure. I mean, I would say more than half of my breakdown with a track saw and then eventually make it to the table saw. But the table saw is just, it's a hard thing for me to imagine not having in my shop because I do use it so much for joinery applications. Did Philip make pancakes? No. What a turd, right? And it probably would have been British pancakes. And just something about that sounds like it probably doesn't taste that good. Is that wrong of me to say? 100 grand are pretty darn good too, man. You're not wrong with that. I'll take 100 grand. All right, what else? Anything else we got? Is this a question for me? Thoughts on Skyline chili? My thought is I never had it. That's a Cincinnati thing, isn't it? Like a big deal in Cincinnati? My cousins live there, and I've never actually had it. So I don't remember exactly where Philip is from. I know he told me, but I don't remember. But he's lived in the States for a long time, and his accent kind of developed as maybe a little bit of Texas influence because he lived in Texas for quite some time. So now he's up in the Northeast teaching at the Center of Furniture Craftsmanship in Maine. So yeah, he's got a fun accent that's a little bit of a mishmash of things. What vacuum press do you use? I have the Vacuum Press Systems. That's a brand, and they make kind of like industry standard vacuum bags and press units, and they've got some good information on their website. The owner is a wealth of knowledge in the world of anything dealing with a vacuum press, veneering, bent lamination, bending form stuff. Great people over there. Candy corn. Yeah, you know what? I am not anti candy corn. I'll take a few, but then after like maybe 2 or 3, I'm good. It starts to taste like wax, but I'm not anti. Yeah, they boil British pancakes. You guys ever had the Japanese pancakes? Like really super, super fluffy. I made them for Ava because of course we saw an Instagram video, so we had to make them. They're pretty good, but I don't like the flavor as much as like a traditional, I guess, American style pancake. But the texture is like out of this world. Awesome texture, very light and fluffy. Payday's pretty good too. Nicole got me onto Paydays, and she brought him to the shop when her brother was working there because I guess he likes them too. And I was like, man, this little stick of nuts is pretty darn good. It's a good stick of nuts. Okay. All right. Well, I think we've exhausted all of the useful information we can get out of this. Just a quick reminder, thewoodwhispererguild.com is the place to go when you want to get serious about your woodworking education, take it to the next level, all on-demand courses. When it comes to this particular course, the Bent Lamination with Philip Morley, it's on pre-order right now because as of tomorrow morning, when I wake up, I get a cup of coffee. I might get a little egg sandwich or something for myself, and then I'll mosey on into the office and hit publish on a bunch of videos. All the videos will drop. You'll get everything that's associated with this. I think it's a total of how many videos on this one? 8 videos. So this is not like our normal builds. It's just techniques. So it's not going to be, 40-minute videos, but there are 8 individual videos going through all the different techniques. You got a little teaser here, but there's way more where that came from. And you get the pre-order discount, which again, tomorrow, price goes back up. The other thing is for your purchase now, if you actually do pre-order this thing or you buy this course, you're going to get my Bent Lamination quilt rack as a bonus. Like I said, it's the first time we've ever done something like that, so I think it's pretty cool. Nicole said she's got an email set up. So the way you get the bonus is you make the purchase of the pre-order, you get Philip's course, and then you'll receive an email from us. So just make sure you check your spam. That email will contain the coupon code that you need to come back to the site. Add that quilt rack to your cart. The coupon will take the price down to 0, and boom, it's in your library forever. And you know what? I probably should mention that when you buy a course, you become a guild member, and that kind of means a lot. It's a lot of things. You get access to our discounts with vendors. A lot of people make the cost of what they paid for a course or their membership over the years gets paid for in discounts with vendors that associate with us. So we got some great vendor discounts in there. We've got a community inside, just a forum inside the Guild website. You get access to our Facebook group. The only redeeming thing about Facebook anymore is the Wood Whisperer Guild group. I'm proud of that. No, it's actually a really great place. A lot of good people there. You get to hang out at our Wednesday watch-alongs that we do with Greg. He picks out some great, we usually watch a Guild video and like New Yankee Workshop or Woodworks or something cool from YouTube. We just watch it together as a community. And geez, what else? We've got demos that we do, monthly demos now, and Guild meetings. There's just so much that you get for the cost of that course. Way, way more than simply buying a couple of videos. So we're very proud of it, and we think you will enjoy it. So go take a look. Again, it's thewoodwhispererguild.com, or you can go twwguild.com, whatever. However you want to get there. We don't care. It's fine. All right? So with that, you guys have a wonderful evening. I'm going to go take care of a pumpkin carving situation, and I hope you guys have a happy and safe Halloween. And if you have any questions at all, email us. We'll take care of you. All right? See you guys later. Say bye, Dougie. You don't care. Does not care.